how civil society around the world has been hijacked by what's often referred to as non-governmental organizations or NGOs that are actually funded by governments and cooperate closely with intelligence agencies. Now, this is a very important aspect of how foreign policy is being done. Perhaps it's a good place to start is, what is the origin of this? Where does this actually go back to, this huge monster which has been growing now for so long?
It's a great question. You started it by saying an active and organized civil society, and I think what is now reaching peak public awareness is just how that organization is structured. There can be an organic organization, and then there can be an astroturfed one or a sponsored one, as you mentioned, by organs of statecraft or intelligence. This goes back to essentially the intelligence structure that grew out of World War II. In World War II, you had the United States support for Europe against, obviously, Hitler and Mussolini. And in the course of that, the predecessor to the CIA, the OSS, had to make allies with various organs of civil society during the war, made allies with church institutions and the Vatican, which was being persecuted by Mussolini, had to make allies with trade, labor, and union groups, which ran logistics in Europe and therefore supplies for weapons and cash and all manner of aid. When World War II ended and the OSS, our wartime spy agency, became the CIA, the peacetime spy agency, we essentially kept those practices of partnership with civil society instead of for a hot war, but for a cold war. And so the utility, for example, of relationships with media organizations, which was run before a peacetime spy agency, it was run by our War Department in the 1940s. The Office of War Information essentially centralized the U.S. military's relationship with media institutions. Those proved to be even more essential in democracy than they were in kinetic war, because a democratic outcome depends on the hearts and minds of the people, which depends on the media inputs they have. And so as the Cold War raged across Europe, across Africa, across Latin and South America, across Southeast Asia, these civil society partnerships in media, in labor and unions, in universities, in the legal field through rule of law programs, basically every institution in arts and culture, obviously, it became seen as a national security imperative to co-opt all parts of civil society in places that were of geostrategic interest to the United States.
Well, it seems that though in the 1980s, the development of this National Endowment for Democracy has really become, a cornerstone of a lot of these NGOs, because they also finance other NGOs. I always found this to be fascinating, because with political propaganda, one often